Okay, episode 8, I believe. I should have checked before I said that, but episode 8 of the Clemson Tigers Baseball Show or Clemson Baseball Show. Casey the Beef Cregan, JP, Jason Priester, all ClemsonTigers.com. It's Thursday night, so we're going to talk a little Clemson baseball for the second consecutive week. The Tigers are playing a the Saturday series, which I just figured that out about 5 minutes before I texted you guys and asked you if you could come on tonight. Not keeping up with the schedule so much these days. Tigers are 17-13 on the season, last place in the ACC Atlantic at 2-9. Got swept by Wake Forest, then run ruled. There's our fourth contributor. Run ruled Coastal Carolina Tuesday. And, a friend of mine texted me and said he didn't realize there was a run rule in college baseball until Tuesday. Coastal had a game tonight, I believe, in Statesboro and short on pitching and whatever. So anyway, long way about it. Tigers 17-13, 2-9 in the ACC, traveling to Tallahassee tonight. JP, what'd you take away from the Wake Forest series? A couple of competitive games there, but the Tigers ended up losing all three.
Yeah, I actually asked Eric back at after that series finale about some of the positives he could take away from that series, going toe-to-toe with Wake Forest, especially over those last two games. And he wasn't really having much of that. He didn't want to talk too much about positives right now. But, I mean, there are a lot of positives to take away from that series. That Clemson's lineup hit some of the best pitching they're going to see all season long, one of the best rotations in the country. Had some pretty good success against those guys. And I didn't think the pitching was terrible, for the most part. Not saying it was great, superb, or anything like that, but I thought it was, especially, that second game, I thought it was good enough. It's just kind of where they are right now, but going toe-to-toe with the second-ranked team in the country, that's something you can build off of.
Beef?
Yeah, I thought they had it Sunday with the comeback and Saturday leading much of the game as they did. But, yeah, Wake Forest is really good. So, even we said it last week, we were hoping to sneak one out, and I think they had the opportunity to sneak two of those out, really. I know they were down most of the game. They scored 3 runs in the ninth on Sunday, but there was a lot of momentum building. How good can you feel after 3 losses? But I came away okay. I mean, they competed in a year that we're not supposed to Clemson's not supposed to compete. They did. They really did with the number 2 ranked team in the country. I don't know. I mean, there's no moral victories. I don't do moral victories, but there is, like JP said, there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good. Some of these batting averages are great. I know with the way sabermetrics is nowadays, people don't look at that so much, but a lot of these averages, and I was there Tuesday night, are really pretty good. And these guys can hit.
They crushed the ball Tuesday against Coastal Carolina. I know I lost my train of thought what I was gonna bring up, but they did crush the ball Tuesday against Coastal. Just hit with runners on, hit with nobody on. I don't know, Coastal's pitching situation on Tuesday. I knew they started a conference series tonight, just like Clemson did. So, how much can you take away from that? I don't know, but Beef mentioned it, and. Well, first, I do remember what I was going to say. First, I was going to say I looked at the ACC standings preparing for this show tonight. I know you're surprised I prepared. You look at the ACC Atlantic, and what do you see there? At the bottom of the ACC Atlantic is Clemson, and right above them is Florida State. These two very proud programs are kind of in the same position, right? A new coaching staff, rebuilding, probably going – I don't know about Florida State, probably going through a lot of change in personnel. Florida State's on a 10-game losing streak. They haven't won a game since March the 17th is what I saw. JP, have you had a chance to see any of Florida State this year? I know early on they looked pretty good. They actually won some games early, as I said. They're on 10-game losing streak, but they're having a tougher year than Clemson.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of Florida State, but same deal as Clemson's going through. First year head coach, transition on the coaching staff, transition on the roster. I would imagine, if I'm not mistaken, there was a fair amount of turnover on that roster. So, kind of, like you just mentioned, similar situations, both programs. Clemson, at least did bounce back against Coastal. They're not coming in on a losing streak the way Florida State is, and coming off that Wake Forest series, I was kind of wondering if frustration might start to set in with the Clemson team at some point. They're so close, and they keep, dropping games in different kind of ways, and they're close games, but they bounce back against Coastal, and that was a game that could have gone either way, it seemed like, for a little while there over the first part of that game. They were going back and forth. Every time Clemson would put some runs on the board, Coastal would come right back and cut the lead to 1 or whatever. Clemson finally pulled away at the end. It's good to see they're not getting frustrated or still buying in. So maybe they get this thing turned around. Eric Backett was confident. He talked about it after game 2 against Wake, after game 3 against Wake. And he made sure to say it was not coach speak. He believed with every fiber of his being that they were close and they were fixing to turn it around. And when they did, they were going to be trouble.
Nice. Beef, speaking of those ACC standings, I sent you a message the other day that someone has placed Boston College as the number 1 seed. And they're not even first in the Atlantic, but they're having a good year in Boston. But have you seen much of Florida State, if any of them?
Not a ton, no. But I have kind of peeped them. Actually, the last game that I saw, you mentioned Boston College. The last game that they've won was against Boston College. They won 1 of 3 in that series. So the last win that Florida State has had is against BC. So they took 2 of 3 from TCU early in the season. TCU's ranked number 8. I think this is just a really bad stretch for Florida State. They also dropped Tuesday night. They lost to Jacksonville, I believe, in a close game, 5-4, and they actually used their former Sunday night starter, Sunday afternoon starter, to play that game. So I think even Link Jarrett, that kind of said to me, Link Jarrett might be pressing a little bit to make sure they get a win, and they still did not. They still dropped that game, but yeah, I think it's the same story. I think they have their guy. They have the guy that came home. I think they're going to get their people. I think he's going to get his guys. And if his past is indicative of his future, those guys are going to play fundamentally sound baseball, and they're not going to make errors, and they're going to move runners, and they're going to run the bases. And he probably doesn't have his guys there. I'm sure he has athletes there, but I'm just not sure he has Link Jarrett type players. But I'll go on record to say I bet in a year or 2 he certainly will.
That's one of the things you and I used to talk about was how Notre Dame had a bunch of nondescript guys out there, and you look up and you're losing like 6-2 to them because they ran the bases well, they pitched competently, they played good defense, they stole bases. So, yeah, we can certainly expect that from Florida State once he gets, quote, his guys in there, I'm sure. And I watched one of those guys from Notre Dame crush the Astros in the series for the Tigers recently. So I was like, where did that guy go to school? Crap, I hate him. I still hate him. We've been talking about this, fellas. It's not the hitting for Clemson. Cannarella's at 420 with 25 RBI, leading the team from the leadoff position with 25 RBI. Caden Grice at 347 with 7 homers and 23 RBIs. Those 7 home runs lead the team. We were like really down with him for the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, and the dude is batting 347. Will Taylor at 343. Ben Blackwell, 319, Cooper Engel, 310. So the top of that order, and I guess Blackwell's not necessarily at the top of that order, is putting some hits together and having a good season at the plate. JP, your take on what we're seeing from the batters so far this year?
Yeah, I think Clemson's offense has been more than serviceable, especially the top 5, 6, 7 spots in that batting order. maybe the 8 and 9 holes, have struggled a little bit. I know they've used Jack Crichton a lot this year, and he struck out a lot. He's kind of adjusting to the collegiate level, let's say, I guess. But for the most part, they are getting plenty enough offense. It is definitely the inconsistencies along that pitching staff that have been the culprit for the most part, giving up leads late in games, and starting pitching not being able to go deep enough. Another thing Backus mentioned last weekend was the possibility of getting Ryan Ammons back this weekend. If that is the case, that would be a big shot in the arm. He said Billy Barlow was potentially a week behind him, so if they could get him back next weekend, that would be great too. But if you could get Ryan Ammons back this weekend, it gives you, another option or two of what you could do with the rotation. And we see that the only starter announced for this series so far was Austin Gordon in the first one, and it's to be determined in games 2 and 3. Wouldn't be, I've wondered if maybe once Ammons gets back, maybe we see Nick Clayton get a shot to start games, because he has been pretty dang good coming out of that bullpen, and he's shown he can go 4 or 5 innings if you need him to.
Yeah, I think, didn't Backett say last week that Ammons was going to come out of the bullpen when he came back?
Yes, he did.
That could change. We got as you said, the TBA twins going in game 2 and game 3 for Clemson. Beef, your take on the bats and also what we've seen on the mound so far.
I'll start. Ammons Tuesday night was in uniform. Didn't look, he was running around with the team, so I don't know if he was in uniform over the weekend, but okay.
Yeah, he hadn't even looked at no slinging anything. Yeah.
One takeaway that I had from, I know I'm talking about the bats here, but from watching it Tuesday night, real small sample size, was the body language on Caden Grice was unbelievably good. It was, he got excited when he knocked in 2 runs. He did this whole leg kick up in the air and fist pump and really rallying the boys. He was talking to all his players, joking around with Riley Bertram during a particular play, and I just thought really interacting well. He was talking to the pitcher every once in a while just to kind of calm down. I know Joe Allen had a rough outing there he didn't even get an out. He was trying to calm him down. I really like, and then I think it really translated to him at the plate. He's really patient. He was really patient this week. He was raking. I love Canarell at the top spot because he takes pitches. He is the prototypical leadoff hitter. Takes pitches. He got hit in his first at bat this week on Tuesday night, then absolutely raked the ball to the gap. I like how Backett moved or has had Blackwell at the 9 hole just to kind of get that kind of double lead off to go old school, because Blackwell's been hitting the ball. He didn't hit the ball too well on Tuesday night, but it's still, you can tell that's a good feel. Gerald's in the 8 hole, and he hits. His average is like 212 or something like that, but he hits the ball as hard as anybody on the team, and I think he just has a bit of bad luck. And for a guy that you're not really expecting a lot of offense from, man, he still swings it pretty well. So there's not a lot of holes necessarily as you would see in some lineups in this lineup, which I think probably leads to Backett saying that they're so close because we're at 1 through 7 probably throw Blackwell in, so 1 through 6 and then 9 hole. You're that close, and you throw 2 holes in there. They're trying to fill it with Nathan Hall or Leighton Lawton and Crichton. They're trying. I think he's just tinkering, man. He's close. It feels like they're close.
I mentioned Crichton a minute ago. I meant to say Hall. He's the one that's been playing, that freshman that's been playing a lot now. Outfield seems to be struggling. But even Bertram down there, his average isn't that high, but he's getting quality at bats. He's moving guys over. I mean, he's doing all the things they want him to do, even though it might not be showing up. He's doing things that might not show up in the box score.
Beef, you mentioned Jacob Gerald. He's also without an error as a true freshman, as a catcher. I think I saw I forgot how many chances he's had, but he has 0 errors on the season. So he's been a real find there at catcher. Allowed Cooper Ingalls some breaks and some DHs. Some time at the DH, I believe. As much as the Clemson pitching staff has struggled with a 4.92 ERA, Florida State is over a half a run worse. They're like 5.50. They've got a couple starters in the 6s and 7s in the ERA. And Beef, why don't you tell us what you know about Florida State?
Well, what I know is what I pulled off the interwebs. They've lost 10 straight. They're 12-6 total on the year. They're 3-9, one game ahead of Clemson. Really led by sophomore center fielder. What is it? Sophomore DH, I guess. Jaime Ferrer. He's hitting 370, 4 home runs, 24 RBIs. Then they got James Tibbs the third, seems like he's been there at Florida State for a long time. He's been really DHing, so I don't know what's going on there, but he's hitting 330, leads the team with 9 home runs. They also have Cam Smith, who that name rings a bell. I wonder, was he one of the guys that Clemson lost? He's a true freshman. And I don't know why, JP. I just thought maybe he was one of those guys. But 5 home runs is from a true freshman there for Cam Smith. He's playing third base for them. And as you spoke of, their pitching staff is struggling. Really just Jackson Bomeister is 1 and 2. He's their ace. He's the guy that goes on Thursday or Friday nights. He's pitched 29 innings in 8 appearances with 40 strikeouts. So the strikeout is good. ERA 4.60, not good. Win-loss 1 and 2. That's not really indicative, but the team struggled as well. Opponents are hitting 273 against them. Their other guy that they named was Connor Whitaker. They're both right-handed starters for tonight and tomorrow night. Connor Whitaker, 4.67, 3 and 2 ERA. He's got 38 strikeouts and 34 and 2/3 innings. And opponents are nearly hitting 300. They have a whole boatload of guys who have started games. Again, it's the TBD Twins, or they got a TBD on Sunday. I was trying to deduce who I thought was going to start, but like I said, Ryan Dennison is their normal Saturday starter. He went on Tuesday night against Jacksonville. Then there's a Jamie Arnold, but his numbers are atrocious, so maybe they're moving away from him. So I just couldn't figure out who they're going with. But this is a series that I know it's on the road. It's a tough place to play down there, but this is a series Clemson should win, I believe.
Agreed.
Maybe Florida State's missing their pitching coach. Huh?
They may have some injuries too. I tried to get it in my hour of research, but I couldn't.
You might be on to something there, Marty.
Hey, somebody asked me the other day, well, how many pitchers is Coastal going to bring in? They're going to run out. I was like, oh no, they were on the road, but I like they probably Clemson's used 19 pitchers this year. So Florida State at home might have 20 or 22 on the staff. Been struggling, like you guys said. The pitching staff has been struggling, but Austin Gordon's been competitive, right? His ERA doesn't look good. He doesn't have any wins, I don't think. But he's been competitive out there. Grice has done some good things. Curious why Grice was not one of those TBAs. So I've seen some concern on Twitter, and I've seen some people say, oh, they're just playing games. But who knows? Do you know anything, JP, about Grice's arm?
No, I do not. I've not heard anything. I'm not up there this week, though, so I haven't really talked to anybody. I wondered if maybe they weren't just leaving their options open, seeing what happens in the first game, maybe thinking about moving him into that second game rather than pitch the last one. I don't know. I think there are a lot of things probably.
Yeah.
Not to stoke a fire, but
decision. I think Grice has really started to come alive at the plate since he's been pitching, and B touched on it a minute ago. His leadership on the field is really starting to show through too.
He hit that double the other night, and his strides are about 1.5 miles long. I was standing right there along the first base line, and he took a stride and then slid and ripped his pants into second and came up a little hobbly. And then when he was out in the field, he was doing some stretches with his back. So I hope, God willing, he's not hurt, but just keep an eye on that if you start hearing something.
He's been pretty good in his starts, just not been able to go very deep. He seems to run out of gas there. I don't know why that is, but maybe he wasn't stretched out all the way when the season started. I don't know. That's just a guess. But if he doesn't start this weekend, then maybe there is some tiredness with that arm or something.
Beef, when you saw Grice slide and tear his pants, was that before or after you ran into Dabo?
That was before.
Before, literally
ran into him.
You didn't knock him down, did you?
No, I was doing the whole like what all the kids do. There was a big crowd of people, and I was trying to walk through, and I was on my phone, and literally he was taking a selfie with somebody because that's what the crowd was there for. And I bumped elbows with him, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, hey, coach, sorry about that." So,
That happened to me with Danny Ford about 7 or 8 years ago at the baseball park.
Also happened to you with the Georgia Tech football player, I recall, that wasn't exactly the elbow he bumped, but
it was Florida State, wasn't
actually, Florida State, it was Jamie Johnson.
I thought it was Georgia Tech. Oh well.
Jamie Johnson.
I had bumped a few beers.
Ironically, who we are talking about, Florida State.
Yes, sir. Well, very similar profiles on these teams. RPIs are close. Clemson's got a better record, first-year coaching staff. It'll be interesting. You two guys think Clemson should win this series? JP, is that what I saw you agreeing to?
Yeah, I think you got it. Going. I know you're going down there and playing in that place. It's not been the best of friends to you in the past, let's say. But this is a Florida State team that comes in reeling, and I really do. I'm kind of with Eric Backus, man. I think this team is very close to getting it turned around, especially if they could get Ryan Ammons back this weekend again. I think that would be a huge shot in the arm. I do. I think Clemson takes 2 out of 3.
Beef?
Yeah, I'm thinking Clemson takes 2 out of 3. The only thing that gives me pause is who the losses are to. If they didn't lose to Jacksonville, I know it's baseball, anything can happen. But if they didn't lose to Jacksonville this weekend, I would have definitely paused hard because they lost 3 to Miami, they lost 3 to UVA, they lost to Florida, they lost 2 to BC. That's having an unbelievable year. They lost 2 to UCF. So UCF swept Clemson. So there was a little bit of pause in thinking about it. But that game against Jacksonville, yes, it was close. But once I figured out that they used one of their normal weekend starters, and maybe he was being demoted anyway, I just had a feeling that I think this pitching staff is reeling for Florida State and the way that Clemson hit the other night and even hit over the weekend. I know they didn't score a ton of runs, but they definitely put the ball in play a lot against Wake Forest and made the defense make plays. And I just feel like there is momentum building, and I feel like they can get 2 out of 3 and hope for a sweep. But I truly believe they win 2 out of 3.
It's time for the pendulum to swing.
Exactly.
Yep. 2 out of 3 would be nice. Tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern. Saturday at 2. Tonight is on the Spurl Network, also called the ACC Network. So I'm trying to figure out what gadget I'm going to buy after I watch the first 6. I've got the Tri-Burst lights. I don't need the Irish potato peeler, but ACC Network tonight, 8 p.m. You can find Casey's work on the Message Board Geniuses and the Chop and Beef podcast. Casey, no podcast this week. Zach's on vacation. I missed it. I missed my Chop and Beef jokes every week. Jason Priester is on the internet every day. You can see his face some way, shape, or form on some show. His work can be found at allclemsontigers.com. Hey, Jason, we got the spring game next week. What you got cooking over at allclemsontigers.com?
I have been focused a lot more on recruiting this week, with the big, I'm just going to call it junior day last weekend, a bunch of 2025 kids in last weekend. And I have been talking to a bunch of them. So I've got several recruiting stories coming out, but we'll start previewing the spring game next week. We'll be there covering it. Nick Easton and CJ Spiller are your coaches, and we're kind of interested to see this new offense air it out a little bit. Going to be more recruits on hand, and I think they are going to want to put on a show.
All right. Sounds good. Casey, what are you talking about over on the Geniuses?
Just the wonderfulness that is message boards. That's all.
That's all you need for that.
This week we had the show comes out tomorrow. We had something on Caitlin Clark. We had the Kansas University talking about the dislike of pandas. We have a lot of crazy people on message boards, and we just dissect them every week.
Oh, that sounds like fun. I'll have to tune in for that. I haven't listened to one of those yet. Thank you, fellas. For Casey the Beef Cregan and Jason Priester of allclemsontigers.com, I'm Marty Coleman. We'll see you next week, maybe, on the Clemson Baseball Show. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.